Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. The short story which you have assigned us today, Sweet Rice, I'm going to talk about its characters first. There are three characters. The main character is Shiri, who is a doctor by profession, who is actually she used to work in a hospital in Karachi, and now is with her husband, like they are posted to London due to his husband's job, who is a banker, and their son Temur, he is the third character in the story. Okay, now coming towards that, the main plot of the story. The main plot of the story is it revolves around Shiri. First of all, this in like from the very start, we came to know that Shiri is a Capricorn. Capricorn. You were talking about the zodiac signs, that if we do believe on them or not. I think we can somehow relate the traits of these zodiac signs with these two characters, Jamil and Shiri. Jamil, who is a like Libran, and Shiri, who is a Capricornian. So, by these terms, Capricornian gloom and Libran discernment, we came to know a bit of their characteristics. She is Capricorns, they are by nature always, you said that they are always sad for some reason, and what I found is that they are somehow there is a trait of depression or despondency in their characteristic, in their character, and yes, we can find that in Shiri also. She is very much depressed because she's not able to move on. She's not able to move on, especially in this new place where like in London, and the problem which she's facing is also that she now here, her job, her professional job is replaced with like a domestic housewife, and she's not happy, she's not satisfied with that. Okay, and as far as Jamil is concerned, we can also talk about his Libran discernment, that he is very much judgmental, as the writer has also told us about that even her best was never good enough for Jamil's Libran discernment. So it shows that Jamil was very much his ability to judge her, maybe, or he was so calculating. And as far as the sign of Libras is concerned, we know that the sign of Libra, it is represented by scales. So we can say that maybe Jamil is, he's trying to create perfect ways all the time through his logical and rational thinking, as it is very much difficult for Shiri to please him, which is told here by the author. And okay, now moving towards the plot of the story. Like on the very first page, I can see that Jamil is very much manipulative when he says that whensoever like Shiri tries to add some sort of a qualification to her the required British degrees, which really need to move on or to get along with the profession she was practicing in Karachi. So now her husband, he is very much manipulative, and he is very much controlling her, as he always found some excuse. Okay, and here we can see that Shiri, she is very much submissive, and she has to deal with him in a sense that the author has described this in the line, surgeon for her an ideal for him was going to last. So it was an ideal time, although for Jamil, because he is described as being a dedicated banker, an ambitious one, although it was not a very good time for Shiri. And okay, and as far as the sweet rice is concerned, yes, Jamil, he has asked his wife to make to arrange a dinner for his colleagues or his partners or his associates. So now Shiri is, what she is doing is that she is thinking that what she should cook, although she does not like to cook for his partners. But here, she's shown as a very dutiful wife, as a very passive one. And then the writer is giving us some sort of a personal history or background of Shiri, about his parents from Multan. And then there is this reference, or a reminiscence or a memory or a reflection to the past, where of the sweet rice, where Shiri is, having, she is eaten, Shiri eats, or Shiri loves to eat that delicacy described by the author, the delicacy sweet rice, and which was used to be made by her grandmother. Okay. And now Shiri is, like, reflecting upon the past. She is thinking that she should make some sort of a sweet rice for the for the dinner. And okay, after this, now she wants, as she want, the grandmother is no more, so now she want a cookery book or a recipe book for to make or to cook that sweet rice. So what she's trying to do is that she is searching, or foraging the old, her cupboards and her wardrobes, where she what she, like, searches is a book. In a nutshell, I am cutting out all the other books which she have, like, which she searched. It was about the novels which she, of A.R. Khatun, and then of Abdul Halim Sharar. After, in a nutshell, she what she got is Numa Kana, which was a book. And it was a book, which has that recipe of sweet rice, of that orange rice, which is called over here by the author. And yes, after that, what we see is that Shiri, uh, okay, Shiri gets, now there is this character, not a reference, Mohammed Begum, who is the writer of that book, of that cookery book. And Shiri is inspired by her and motivated by her, in a sense that that woman, she was an editor of the Urdu journals for, and she worked a lot, like, for a woman. And her husband, um, he supported his wife, his husband Mumtaz Ali, he supported her his wife. And he was also a fighter for the rights of the women, to, like, to help them in, to choose their destinies or their fates, and to to work. And they, like, both collaboratively worked for the rights of women. So after that, we see that there is a change in Shiri's attitude. By this line, and I am 40 and still alive, and have abandoned my years of useful training and service to languish and moan in a luxurious central London flat. So what she realizes here is that after, even the death of even after the death of Muhammadi Begum, that author of that Nemat Khana book, even after the death, she is still alive through her books. Okay. And even after, even her death, the time span of her death is now a century later on, but she's alive through his, like, through her readings, through her, sorry, accounts, through her writings, through her literary works. And here, what she realizes is that she gets some sort of a stimulation and inspiration, and she is encouraged that she should also do something like that, because she is, although 40, but she is alive, so she should need, but there is a need, that she should do something with her life too. So after that, what she realizes is that she should, like, like she decides that she wants to assemble or compile or compose a book called Sweet Rice. And she calls her friend Yasmin to, and she shared her idea with her. and together they went to a publisher who can assist Shiri in this project. Okay, and now I want to say that this maybe she wants to title the book Sweet Rice, because that's Sweet Rice, because maybe she is very much she has that fondness with her childhood memory that she wants to name her book Sweet Rice. In the there is her like memory with her grandmother who used to make sweet rice for her. So it is again reflecting upon her past, or it is like denoting us all that her affection for her grandmother maybe, or for that food that grandmother used to make for her. And as far as the title is concerned, again I would say that yes, sweet rice means a sticky or gummy dish. It is but it is a very delicious dish. And as far as relating it with the modern society, I can say that we should also have that approach, that we should also be goal oriented and very responsible and serious by nature. As Shiri is here described as goat-like determination. So this goat-like is again telling us about her Capricornian trait. That the sign Capricorns present is of a goat. So this is again a sign of her being a Capricorn, and her nature is again described here is by telling us that she's very responsible and serious. So we should also be like ambitious and goal oriented. Although she was not able, like in London, she was not able to practice or to get along with her, profession or her occupation, but she still has that passion, has that potential to do something. So that is why she उसने कुछ ना कुछ करने का सोच लिया, और उसने like she gathered something um, something possible from impossible. And that's all.
Assalamualaikum ma'am, my name is Anika Tariq, and I am from BSML 8th, and I'm really sorry this audio might reach you at an ungodly hour. It took me a little time to get everything sorted, but I started this audio with a basic summary of Sweet Rice, and a summary entails discussing a plot, and a plot has action. But this story for me is not so much centered upon actions itself, but the ideologies that are at play. For instance, there may be two opposing ideas colliding with one another, creating a dichotomy, or there may be internalized ideologies which are existing within the individuals, or prevailing ideologies existing in the society in general. And these ideologies at play, they give rise to conflicts, and these conflicts then create the meaning which make these mundane actions significant. So my analysis would mostly be based on discussing the various conflicts. Let's start with the introductory paragraph, which, since the introductory lines are so important, they set the mood for the whole story. And the mood they're setting for Shireen's character is that she lives an uneventful life. The first word that comes to my mind is dejected. She has had her birthday a few weeks ago, but she's receiving her gift now. And then there's this emotional detachment or aggression when she finds out that guests are coming, those guests whom she's not expecting, or whom she wants to meet. Then this gloomy mood continues from emotional dullness to her physical routine, where we see that her routine is characteristically boring. Her life revolves around leaving the house, coming back with her son from school, with short visits to the library, and most of the time she is by herself or she's cooking at home, and her life is a very domestic kind of simple. And then likewise, her social routine is as simple as her everyday life. We see only one friend whom she meets, and then her relationship with her husband is one of the main conflicts that we see in this story, because he's not around. He's mostly on his business trips, and there's this one line where she says that I laugh sometimes, or not as often, but I do, but never with the husband. So there's this social distancing between them. And if I have to give this characteristic a reason, then it is because one major part of her identity was stolen from her, and that was her longing for a job. She studied medical, she had practiced it, and now she wanted to pursue her career, but she was hindered. And there were various factors which resulted in this as a let me rephrase that, which made this possible. The very first dilemma that she was facing was that she was in a completely different country. She had no experience and no knowledge and no resources or opportunities as those that the natives had. Then another was the patriarchal mindset. Her husband was not ready to give her enough allowance to allow her a decent education. And then it was also the colonialist mindset which prevented her, in a sense that they did not consider the education of her native place, India or Pakistan to be specific, to be at par with their education level. So all of these factors led to her basic conflict of not meeting a very important part of her identity. And when we put the husband and the wife against one another, we see the husband adopting this prevailing ideology of the individualistic mindset, the order of the new world, where he wants to go out and explore and live an adventurous life and make his own mark on the world, but she's not allowed to do so. And while she cannot find herself settling permanently in the foreign world, the husband is completely normal in his surrounding. He has adjusted himself, suiting or morphing his personality to accommodate for his needs. And furthermore, there is another point which also shows the husband's colonialist mindset once again, which is that he says or he believes in the theory 2 weights and 2 measures. He puts himself or in fact the wife or their culture against the culture or the people of the foreign world, of London. This internalized hierarchy makes him put them in the superior position, and where the wife's cooking is suitable for him, it is not good enough for those people who are superior to them. After this ends, once again we get an introduction to the character of Shireen, whom we start to sympathize with as a lonely and forgotten character in a completely alien world. However, despite all of that, she accepts this duty which has been imposed on her, as she says, since that, and I quote, since that was the role she had been allotted by life's scene shifters, she was, end quote, she was given this role to be fulfilled. Again, these lines highlight the patriarchal conflict, the internalized colonialist mindset, and once again the loneliness of her character, where she does not seem to blend in. There is this sense of how should I say it, there's this longing to belong. However, she cannot find herself suiting that environment. And this is a character, rootlessness, that's the word. Rootlessness is a characteristic of most diasporic writing, where the immigrant cannot adjust to the new culture and forsake all of the values which he had previously valued. So Shireen, unlike her husband Jamil, faces a cultural conflict. She cannot even accept the wives of his friends, whom she sees so different from herself in every possible way, such that their company agitates her. And then another characteristic of diasporic writing, when the characters cannot find their true identity or themselves, their self in the new world, they regress to their past memories and they find solace in them. Shireen does the same when she's thinking of a way to connect with herself. Well, basically, let me start in this way, that she wants to make a perfect dish, she wants to make an impression, she wants to set her mark now, being the perfectionist and having the pride that she does. She wants to show or she wants to seem in her natural element. And how she achieves that is by making a dish that connects her to her past. So symbolically, this means that Shireen is embracing her roots. She's connecting with her community, and this sweet rice dish is acting as a bridge of joining her now lonely self and the world that she had left behind, and she is now trying to bridge the gap and create a remedy. And this point about sweet rice acting as a symbol for her identity is further emphasized by the fact that sweet in Urdu is Shireen, so the name itself represents her, and therefore it acts as the perfect personification. No, metaphor. It acts as a perfect metaphor and stands in as a figure for Shireen herself. So by successfully making the sweet rice dish, she is actually completing the part of herself which she lost, which she had lost, or which she still might never get, but might come a fraction closer to reuniting with her past, and also her connection with her own community and her own culture and her own heritage. So back to the story, she reminisces about her grandmother's dish, how much she loved it, the connection it had with her name, her family, and we see how she lived in a fragmented home, dislocated by partition, and then her family suffering through the struggles of it. So the impact that it might have had on her psyche as a child can be seen to persist through her adulthood, and till now she cannot find her ground. And then she also reminisces about her parents, but then she comes back, and then she begins a quest. When we study a journey of a modern hero, we study about the quest a modern hero takes in achieving something. And though this may not seem like a very eventful task, but she goes and searches for an old box, which again for me is a symbol of all her connections with her community. That box represents the culture, the Pakistani culture, which has been buried under the weight of the British culture in her closet, because that box is hidden under uh, things that are belonging to her husband and her child, and we know that her husband and the child, Temur, that's his name, are heavily centered towards the ideologies of the West. So, the box being buried under their treasures means that the English culture has dominated the Pakistani culture, and when she rummages through her stuff and she locates it, she finds the portion of that's her first step, her beginning to relocate herself. And when she starts opening that box, we see a description. So here, imagery, there's heavy imagery to to glorify the past and the Muslim culture, the Pakistani culture, and how it has been repressed, suppressed by the English culture. And if I may quote again, there's a line: while the English culture was chic and desirable, end quote, the Pakistani culture was considered suspect, unworthy, and LMC. And this fascination that we see for the Urdu text symbolizes how the culture is rich and how pure it is only if the colonialist mindset could be set aside and accepted. So the conflict over here has been dismissed, and there is now a revelation, sorry. So now there's a revelation for her, and that is that she wants a revival of her culture, a rebirth of the knowledge that she had forgotten, may never have had, and wants to get. And also she wants to extend it to everybody who has forgotten their the richness and the beauty and the glorious past of their culture. And all of this is symbolized once again by one book, and that is Numa Kana, which was written by Mohammed II Baker. And though it is a book of recipes, and see, recipes might not be considered the best heirloom if you want to talk in terms of symbols or something that is so moving. However, using something which is so characteristically unique, he's setting, the author Hussein is setting, or is making a statement that anything or everything in fact is rich and worthy of acknowledgement, and every single strand or every single part of your culture must be embraced to complete your identity, which Shireen eventually finds in the form of a recipe book, because it links her childhood and also the current dilemma that she's facing. Because when she reads that book, she is so deeply immersed into it that when she comes out, she feels like she has left her home. So the way the book or Numa Kana represents a piece of her country, a piece of her identity, it shows how rooted we are in our culture and how gravely we need to embrace it. And then when she starts reading the history of this woman, we find every single conflict which was existing in the beginning. We find a foil for it. Mumtaz Ali, her husband, he is a foil for Jamil, who was an oppressive, subjugating, imposing husband, who did not let, I was about to say Feroza, Jamil did not let Shireen settle her career as a doctor, whereas Mumtaz Ali, he set up an entire press for his bride just so she could work what she desired to. And then through the stories that are presented of how the girl with the magic fountain and tree and bird frees her brothers from the brothers who have turned to stone from captivity. This is a symbol for how Jamil is entrapped in the colonialist mindset, and he is not he is not reachable. Then the adolescence part of the story shows how Shireen has grown up and has had to make her way in life, performing all of her duties. And then the conflict of arranged marriage is brought up when she mentions the incompetent, dissipated cousin driving her to despair and death. So all of the concepts that had been mentioned previously of patriarchy, colonialism, and the cultural differences, where the British are considered superior over the Muslims and people of Pakistan, they have been brought up, and they have been discussed in a way that would bring inspiration to Shireen so that she could search for her identity. And this book, Numa Kana, which translates to storehouse, it gives her the confidence to finally pursue something which would allow her to connect with her culture, retain the values, and trace back the history which has been forgotten, and in her own way, which is through recipes, which is again symbolic because it could be any way. And Sweet Rice was just one story of many for Shireen. It could be anything for anybody. One little part of their childhood which could mean which could be the central atom of their bond of togetherness with their society or with their community. That was a long summary. So moving on to the title, since I think I covered characters sorta in the summary. So if I talk about the title, which for me is interesting because there are so many aspects to it. The first one is quite literal, the way we take it as a dish, and the way then we can take it in the way, in the perspective of Shireen, the protagonist, and it could mean a part of her childhood, so a memory, which is very important when studying Pakistani literature, because memories are considered either a way of tracing back to your heritage or your roots, or as a way of escape from your current demise. And I would link it to Daud Kamal's Ode to Death, which again I interpreted as a way of escape. And then of course, Sweet Rice is symbolic of the connection and the revival with and of culture. And then also Sweet Rice can be taken as a spiritual symbol because it allows her to rise above all of the conflicts and transcend her emotional dilemmas and finally find that piece of her soul or her identity which was missing and incorporate it into her life that would give it the meaning which was missing previously. And as a part of the assignment, breaking it up, I read a review on another Gulmohar tree, which is also by Aamer Hussein. So in that little story, he also uses the elements of magical realism to establish or to preach lessons about the conflicts which are existing in the story. And in that story, there is a female protagonist who finds herself adjusting in a foreign land. Lydia, who comes to Pakistan from England, she finds herself settled in Pakistan only when she starts to find the beauty in the culture, which again she also does through learning about it, learning about the language, and through reading. So for me, the main themes are connection with your community, revival of your culture, the rootlessness in the modern immigrant, and the loss of identity and the regaining of your identity, and also your national pride. Then one interesting thing that I'm not so sure about, because stream of consciousness for me is a very difficult concept to grasp. So in my opinion, this story is written in the mode of writing, which is stream of consciousness, because in the middle, here and there are brackets which digress from the main story, and it feels like those portions are the perspective of the author cutting in the narrator, or the perspective of the character cutting in the what's the word for it? Can I say narration? So those brackets, they cut in the narration, and they give that essence of stream of consciousness writing, as it allows me to bring to mind the the novel The Lighthouse. It also had those moments of consciousness where imagery would take over, and it would provide the scene or the mood for the story. Here, the brackets, start quote, above here the inverted gray in the bowl of sky. Page number 34. It provides a mood for Shireen's character, again showing how depressed and forlorn it is, giving the scenery a very dark, bleak image. And that's the end of the very concise understanding of the short story. Thank you, ma'am. Once again, it's very late. Sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. I hope you are doing amazing and wonderful and are in good health. So I've gone through the text of Sweetwise, and I personally believe that this text mainly talks about the predicament of a woman of colour named Serene, who is 40 years old and has been residing in London with her husband and her child. But it's not just that. She was a doctor back at her own country, but then she sacrificed her profession for the sake of looking after her husband and her son, and also that her husband Jamil, who is quite a dedicated banker, how he looks down upon his wife, and how he makes sure then that she stays at home by telling her how her child is too little for her to pursue her profession, or by telling her later that medical studies in London are very expensive. And besides that, her degree is not really important in the so-called Western world, London. It's the third world degree, which is of no importance there. So we see how she struggles with struggles with trying to prove herself and her identity as a person, her identity as a person. So she knows that she can't go for the medical stuff. So she decides upon excelling in the art of culinary. You know, when Jamil told her that he's going to invite some guests, some of his colleagues, she decides that she needs to make the best out of that situation. She needs to excel, and we are also told that how her husband thinks that even if Shireen was giving her best, it was never good enough for her husband Jamil. And Jamil, who who really likes to eat the food made by his wife, thinks that her cooking is not good enough for the outsider. So that's the reason why he suggests that they need to cater food from some Pakistani caterer. And that's when she decides that she's not going to buy that notion that her cooking is good enough for Jamil but not for the outsiders. So we see how she decides upon going out and go for ingredients and stuff like that. But if we leave that part aside, then we see that how she decides upon being a housewife with all of her medical perfectionism or practice that she had been doing back in the days. So overall, I think that this story mainly broadly tells how her actually, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering a lot. Tells how that after a few weeks of her 40th birthday, how she underwent a brief crisis and then received an unexpected gift. So how she went through crisis in a way that how she had to bear the burden of cooking food for Jamil's colleagues, and then met with an unplanned gift, which is her discovery of that book, Numa Kana, and her and her epiphany that she should added that book, which was long forgotten. So I believe that the story basically tells that how Shireen, despite being marginalized by the Western society and despite being subjugated by her own husband or the patriarchal system, tries to make the best out of the situation and tries to achieve excellence, if not in her old profession or designation, then in cooking, and do something that would make herself feel proud and that will give her a position over those Western ladies, not specifically Western ladies, but Jamil's colleagues, as this line explains, that she really wanted to prepare something special to outdo the society hostesses whose home she to every 6th week. So throughout the story, we see how she is endeavoring really hard to achieve something in her life, and by the end we get to know that she is actually planning seriously to do that. So it tells that if you are not able to follow one thing in life, then one shouldn't feel lost. Instead, try and make the best out of the situation that one is provided with.
Assalamualaikum ma'am, my name is Alvina Nazir and my roll number is 16106. Discussing about a short story, Sweet Rice. It is written by a Pakistani critic and a short story writer, Aamer Hussein. It is a story about a couple, Shireen and Jamil, who are living in London. There are only 4 characters in this short story. The first one is Shireen, who is the protagonist of the story, and she is a Bangladeshi doctor. The second one is Jamil, who is the banker and Shireen's husband. The third one is Yasmin, who is the friend of Shireen and she is a minor character. The fourth one is Taimur, who is the son of Shireen and Jamil. The story starts with a few weeks after Shireen's 40th birthday, and she is in depression, and then she receives a gift. After that, the author elaborated about the gift. The husband has so many meetings being a banker, and he tells Shireen about the arrival of guests. She is fed up of guests. She caters dozens of guests at less than a week. After that, the author had told us about the character's detail that in city like London, her powerfully situated husband does not guarantee a work permit or a job. She is a doctor, but she is not doing a job because she has third world degree, which means her degree has not much importance in a city like London because she had a Pakistani degree. The only role she is playing is cooking for her husband's high-powered guest. Her widowed mother had spent all her savings in making her doctor. She was working in Karachi hospital before her marriage. Now she goes out for some time for shopping only to fill up the time, and it reminds her of her previous days and her hospital job in Karachi. She wants to add to her qualification, but her husband always makes some lame excuses, like it's so little, training here is so expensive. She was not mentally prepared that she will have to serve dozen guests at less than a week. Her husband forced her to cook. Then her husband asked her to cook only for themselves and not for the guests. He will bring the food for guests from the restaurant. But she says that why we would bring the food from the restaurant? They are also like us and they can also eat the food which I am cooking. It is my responsibility to serve them, even though she is fed up of all this, but still she thinks that it is her duty. She had to fill her duty. Then there is the entry of her friend Yasmin, with whom she is talking, and she goes back to her home. The author then tells about the chores she does. She goes to her home on foot. Then she picks up her son from the school. Then she cooks food. Mostly she is alone at her home because her husband is always traveling or out for some meeting. Then the author had told about Shireen's lifestyle and which type of dressing sense she had, and what she think about the dressing of English lady, and what she think about the English lady. She did not like them. After that, we get to know that she wants everything to be done perfectly. When she gets to know about the guests, she wants to cook something special for them. She wants to cook something which has some Pakistani taste, and those people who have not tried it here before. Then she reminds of her childhood, that when she kept all her fast for the first time, her grandmother cooked a special kind of rice for her, whose name is Sweet Rice. She likes that dish because that is not an ordinary kind of rice. This dish is very special. Another thing which is special about this dish is her name, Shireen, which means sweet. So, she thinks that this is made only for me. Then, she starts thinking about from where she will bring the ingredient and in which market she will go. She'll go to bring those ingredients, and then what she will do next. Then she realized that she does not know how to cook sweet rice. Then she decided that I will use a cookbook, but then she realized about her family and how they used to cook. She wants to respect the recipe of her family because each and every girl in her family know how to cook. It would be against the manifestation of her heritage. She did not want to do this, but then she finally buy a cookbook whose name is Nehmat Khana, and that is very good book. And it is written in Urdu. She started liking that book and she wants to spend more and more time in reading that book. She is also fond of reading book. We get to know this when we learn about when she bought a book and started reading that book. She then started reading that book in all her free time, and then she cooked food. When she go to pick her son, Temur from school, and then she start thinking about the author of that book, that the author Mohammed Begum, that how her husband encouraged her to study and to write and get her books published. And Shireen's husband is not so encouraging and supporting. When she wanted to carry forward her studies and wanted to do job, her husband made excuses. Then she started comparing herself with Mohammadi Begum. She started appreciating her work, that how beautifully she had written it, and her work is not much explored and not many people know about her work, and how many stories she had written and which type of stories she had written. She tells about 3 types of story, one for the children, one for the middle-aged people, and one for the old people. Then she started appreciating her work and how good her work is. And then she decided that she will also start working. She called her friend Yasmin and tell her that we are going to start a publishing business and we will start writing a recipe book. Like Mohammadi Begum, the writer of the book, which she is reading, Nehmat Khana, and we will write our recipes, and they go to other places. Slowly and gradually, they try to start their business. So this was a summary of this short story. We can compare it with our society, that there are so many girls and women in our society who are not allowed to work even though they are highly educated, and they are forced to stay at home by their families or by their husband, and to only cook food and to take care of their children, and some of them are not given the right to even get proper education, and they are not allowed to fulfill their dream, but they can fulfill their dream when they try their best to make this happen. There are so many Shireen in our societies. Thank you.
Okay, now you know the major characters of the story, the themes, the underlying meanings. There are so many things that have been extensively discussed already. So this is all about the short story Sweet Rice by Aamer Hussein.